How you doing today? Hope your Friday is going well, and we have come now to the end of November, and we're also coming to the end of 2 Corinthians here very quickly, and some great insights in today's reading about leadership, and also about some of the continuing struggles that Paul is having with the Corinthian congregation. And I have a couple things that came to mind today as I was reading and then going over some commentaries that I want to share with you. And first of all, at the end of chapter 6, it's like we got these 5 verses that don't seem to fit with what went before and what was coming after. And some scholars think this was really that little severe letter that Paul wrote to them, and that he referred to in 1 Corinthians 5 verse 9. Some think that in the middle of his dictation he just had this thought, an aside almost, and decided to interject that into the conversation and then go back to what he was talking about. Either way, though, what it really displays is this important idea about how Christians are to not live in the world in the same way as non-believers, and some great thoughts in relation to that, because it fits very well with what Jesus taught in Matthew chapter 7 verses 15 to 20, where he stressed the fact that people who have God in their heart need to give evidence of that belief in the fruit that they bear, in the lives that they live. And now, you got to be careful with this, though, because on the one hand, we're taught that we need to be in the world, not of the world. And so we have to be careful that we don't separate ourselves like physically, totally from the rest of the world and become this little commune or monastery, because then we are not in the world. We are not able to flavor the world. We're not able to bring the light of God's love to the world, and we're not able to share the gospel and participate in God's mission to the world if we cloister ourselves away from everyone else. So you've got that little bit of a tension that we have to walk that line between needing to separate ourselves, to be set apart, and to have a time where we are strengthened, but then to go out into the world and be a presence for God in the world. So we have those 5 verses which give a little bit of a description to that. Then, of course, in chapter 7, Paul, you can almost sense the relief and the joy he's expressing because of the report that Titus gave him back from the congregation in Corinth. And the report was that they had repented, that they were now following what Paul had said. And what he was worried about prior to this was he had that stern letter that we referred to that went out to them, and a subsequent visit to them, quick visit, and that had not solved the issues in some ways. Maybe he was worried that he had pushed too hard with them, and it was really clearly bothering him. But Titus comes with a good report, bringing about this outpouring of joy on Paul's part. And what I want to share with you is, as I was reading a couple of commentaries about this, one commentator expressed what he was taught by a Christian ethics professor named Dr. T.B. Maston way back when he was in school, about this very concept of leadership and how you go about it. Because there's always this element of tension between leader and follower, because a leader is trying to move people somewhere or cause them to do something or respond in a certain way. That applies not only in the church, it applies in the work world, it applies even in our homes as parents with our children. And Maston offers this picture according to this commentator. He said it's like trying to pull a heavy object with a rubber band. If you don't create some tension on the rubber band, the object's not moving at all. If you pull too hard, the rubber band will break. So successful leadership is all about always having enough tension on the rubber band in order to get the movement you desire, but not so much that you ultimately strain the relationship to the point of breaking. And that is the secret of good leadership. And clearly, we could imagine, or at least I imagine, that Paul was probably wondering here if he had pushed a little too far with them. But Titus' report allowed him to relax and say, good, we're okay. But I think it does point out the fact that there are times when accountability and confrontation are necessary in any relationship. And, as Christians, I think it's a cop-out for us to just sit back and say, well, Jesus said turn the other cheek, or I'm a lover, not a fighter, or when parents say, well, I want my children to like me and be my friend. Healthy relationships grow. And in order for there to be growth, there must be some element of stretching, of accountability, of forgiveness in that relationship. That rubber band must be pulled hard enough in our relationships to cause that movement. And that's how these relationships will grow. Being honest, being straightforward with one another, pushing one another, but not doing it to excess. And having the other person also recognize that you're doing it out of a concern, a love for that person. Now, he ends this section on a practical note about the need to give generously. And he says, by the way, I'm sending some brothers. We're taking up a collection for the believers in Jerusalem. If you'll recall in Acts chapter 11, verse 8, the Judeans throughout that region were suffering more than most due to a famine, which was actually predicted in Acts 11, verse 28 by Agabus. And so this famine was taking place, and the Jerusalem believers were really struggling. And so that's what Paul was going through Macedonia and was now telling the Corinthians, we're trying to take up a collection to help them. So that's what that was all about. And he ended the section talking about, once again, his authority. And so there you have it. And I think for me, the learning is about relationships and about the need to constantly be stretching them a little bit in order for things to grow. Just like when we exercise, just like anything else, we need to be stretched. If we're not being stretched, if we're just sitting around comfortable, and there are times when it's wonderful to do that, like Thanksgiving vacations or Christmas vacations and holidays. But there's also a time to push it. And let's not shy away from those times when we need to keep each other on track and grow together. So with that, God's blessings, and we'll talk to you again.